If you're a coach who's ever struggled with being visible, then this is the episode of the show for you. I'm interviewing the amazing Maddy Shine, where we're chatting all things visibility, social media, alternatives to social media, different ways you can be visible, and how to handle the things that might hold you back. Let's dive in. So, hi Maddy, thank you so much for coming on the Wholehearted Business Show today. I'm really excited to chat to you about lots and lots of different things, but particularly about visibility, which I know is definitely a topic that some of my listeners will definitely need some support around and will want to get some nuggets of wisdom from you. But before we dive into that, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, about where you're based, about what you do? That would be awesome.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's very exciting to be here. I am Maddy Shine. No, that is not my birth surname, but I feel like most people think it is. So we're just going to go with it. I am based in Crystal Palace, Southeast London.
Fabulous.
I moved here in lockdown, but I've been in and out of London for about 20 years. Grew up down in the West Country. I know you can tell from my accent, it's so distinct. And so, yes, so I am a visibility expert. I teach people about SEO, marketing, all that kind of jazz. I've been doing this for 12 years now.
Yeah.
And so I manage it across, I manage 3 different brands. I have Maddy Shine, which is where I teach women how to do this stuff. So I have a membership community called the Visible Vibes. I teach online courses. And then I have my Done For You agency, which is sassy and soft. You probably can detect a theme here. And then I also have Maddy and Pip, which is where I organise local meetups for women entrepreneurs with my friend Pip in the pub. So so that's what I do.
That sounds fantastic. So, like I was saying, with visibility, I think it is something that, especially a lot of the women that I work with. So, again, the guys listening to this podcast tend to be health and life coaches. And I think when it comes to visibility, there's so many things that kind of feel overwhelming about the whole topic of visibility. And obviously for my work as well as a business mentor for health and life coaches, I know that visibility isn't just dancing on TikTok,
Thank
doing
God.
cringe dancing. I'd love to hear a bit from you. I mean, what do you tend to come in terms of the kind of struggles that people have with visibility, or the things that keep them stuck? What do you tend to see are the big things that are impacting female entrepreneurs and coaches in this space?
Yeah. So the biggest issue I see is people are worried what others might think of them. That is the biggest issue. And I'm sure you've seen this loads as well. I can say you need to be blogging about this, that, and the other thing. I could be saying you need to be sharing this kind of carousels or doing these kinds of reels. And thank God that dancing isn't the only way to get seen. I used to do it before it was trendy. I don't know why. I've completely stopped now. It's just the thing. And yeah, I mean, the biggest issue is I'm worried what my friends and family might think when I post these things online. They know the truth of me or whatever it might be. Or they know me from a time when I wasn't like this, when I didn't show up in this way, when I didn't claim these certain things of my life. So that's a really big one. And that can't be underestimated. Another one is people are worried what their potential competitors might think of them. So, we're worried that Joe Blogs, who's been doing this for a lot longer than I have, will suddenly have lots of things to say about me potentially being the young upstart, or the other way around. How maybe if we start to do a certain kind of new strategy and start posting more, start doing more reels, start dancing on Instagram. There's nothing wrong with that if that's your vibe. Then again, we're worried about the judgment from others and actually what we're doing is we're not thinking about that all those people are going to be like, oh my God, I love it when Maddy talks about this stuff. It makes me feel so good. And yes, that will be a lot smaller audience to begin with. But then, I started off my mailing list 12 years ago with 20 people, I think even less, maybe 16.
Yeah.
And we all had to start somewhere. And I know that can be terrifying because it involves so much more risk. And we want to follow a formula and we want to have a blueprint. But as we both know, there isn't such a thing as a blueprint anymore. It used to be once upon a time, but there really isn't anymore. And that's exciting, but also terrifying to a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've definitely hit on something around that fear of judgment by other people.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of, for a lot of my clients or people that I work with, health life coaches, that it's almost like they have this part of themselves that they
Yeah.
don't, the mums on the school run don't see that part of themselves. And,
Yeah.
the parents or the cousins or whoever don't really see this part of themselves.
Yeah.
That comes out in their business, and their lifestyle, the things that they're into and they're interested in. And it feels very exposing to suddenly need to become visible to make your business work. Is there
Yeah.
anything that you would suggest, or any tips that you've got for people who are in that situation where they really feel like perhaps they've almost got like a bit of a double life? I think sometimes people feel like they've got this side
Oh
of
yeah.
themselves that they keep back.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there by mentioning that phrase, the double life. We can't ever be all things to all people that we've ever met, whether we're visible online or whether we're not. And I think we forget about that. So the school mums at the gate only really know you as a school mum at the gate. That, you could be richer than Jeff Bezos and they wouldn't know. I mean, they might be able to tell whatever from what you wear, but you know what I mean? Like, they don't know you. They don't, in all the different ways. I've got a similar thing where there's a gang down the pub who, most of them don't know what I do for a job. And that's great. Like, we have conversations about everything else. I don't try and bring all different aspects. First of all, that would be exhausting.
Yeah.
And you would burn out very quickly. But also, it's kind of fun having, you've got your different groups of friends. You've got your friends from university, from school, or wherever it is. And so that's the first thing to recognize. This is just also another aspect of your life. Instagram is not your entire life, or whichever social media is your preference. SEO, getting to the top of Google, that is a job, of course, but it's not everything. You don't have to put everything you are everywhere you are. And I think that with the rise of people like lifestyle influencers and all that kind of stuff, we feel that because we know them a little bit more intimately, then we also have this pressure to show up in all the ways. And so recognizing that is really important. The next thing is to take care of yourself. And I'm not saying, I mean, self-care feels overused, but to really take care of yourself. What do you actually need your business to do? Because we try and be all things to all people, even in our businesses, right? So we're, I could go on and on about niches and all that kind of stuff. Really, what we want to be doing is figure out what we want from our business, and not sort of panicking. Oh well, I could do that, so I'll help you with that. Oh, I could do that. So that again will only ever hurt your visibility efforts because you're trying to be too many different things to too many people. And I know why that is, really, because there'll be a lot of women out there going, I already have to be so many things to so many different people. And you're now asking me to be more. Like, where am I supposed to find that?
We used to trying to solve everybody else's problems as well, which is another place we can get stuck when it comes to the business stuff as well, isn't it?
Completely, because there's no such thing as a business problem. We've got life problems that become business problems. So if you've got hang-ups about money stuff, that doesn't come from nowhere. That's from your life beliefs and how the way you were brought up and all those other influences. And it's the same with your business. So if you have been told that you should sit down, shut up, not have an opinion, which, let's face it, women have been told to do for centuries, then obviously being visible is going to be really weird, right? It's just going to be like, what? So me, you want to listen to my opinion? You trust what I say? Is that okay? Yes, I think it's okay because I've got these happy clients and I've got these brilliant people who have done my course or have walked the walk with me, or you've got the results. And so something that I really love to do is collect. I call it a rolodex of love.
I've heard a few different names, but that is definitely the best name I've ever come across for that kind of thing.
Right? I didn't make it up. I found it years ago. This was, and I remember I was trying to Google it to see like who invented this or where was it quoted, And it turns out that some people refer to that as something quite different. Little black book kind of vibe.
Oh gosh,
which I thought was hilarious. So so the Rolodex of love is basically collecting your absolute, those brilliant clients who love what you do, who buy everything that you sell. Because yes, there might only be 3 or 5 of them. There might be 50 of them. Great. But going through that and looking at the language they use, I find that really, really helpful. So particularly when I'm going through a launch or something like that, then if I'm looking at things like that, this is definitely something I always tell my clients. Collecting that evidence is something that helps click your logical brain in place. And when you are telling your logical brain that something's happening, your emotional sort of side of your brain, if you like, can start to trust it.
Yeah.
Because your emotional side of your brain is only ever going to really trust until you've actually got the evidence, right? You can't just base it on nothing. You can't just be like blind belief. It's a bit like why I really hate that, oh, as long as you've got passion, then you can make yourself succeed. Like, that's not true. Passion burns out extremely quickly if you just rely on passion. Passion has to, the emotions follow the logic. No matter, and I've got a neurospicy brain. So my brain is like, no, we don't listen to logic. We run away from logic. Thank you. But even even with my kind of brain, collecting that evidence is like, oh well, maybe they do know what they're talking about. Maybe I can believe that they think
That
I'm
self-belief and that self-confidence it supports, doesn't it?
yeah, exactly.
And I think that makes such a difference when it does come to being visible and building that up. I know that made a difference when I started in my business, because I started probably similar time to you, so about 12 years ago, I think, but when things were very, very different.
Oh yes, it was a different time.
A very different time. And yeah, I think it makes such a difference just allowing that self-confidence to build up.
Yes.
Because it does become a lot easier, I think, when you're doing that. In terms of visibility, I feel like obviously nowadays there's lots of different ways that you can be visible. You've already mentioned Google SEO, which is something that I'm certainly a big, big fan of, and different forms of visibility. I think often a lot of people tend to feel like visibility is like synonymous almost with social media, but it doesn't have to be. What are your kind of feelings on the different ways that we can be visible if perhaps social media doesn't resonate with us for whatever reason?
So yes, of course, there's lots of people who don't want to use social media for whatever reason, increasingly so. And so what you then have to do is you need to then double down on other areas of visibility. So of course, the biggest one is Google, really. And Google shouldn't be an alternative to social media. You should really be doing some basics on Google, if nothing else.
Yeah.
For example, like making sure you're on Google My Business. So you're literally putting your business on the map. And I know a lot of people work from home, so they don't want to put their home addresses on Google. Well, great, there's a tick box to say hide my address. Simple things like that can really help, because then you can start collecting Google reviews, which then helps your visibility. And then things like, of course, blogging, creating content, repurposing what you've already been doing on social media, helping yourself by sharing your happy client stories, your stories that have happened to you. Why are you a life coach? What's led you to this point? I'm deeply fascinated as to people's stories. It's probably why I do what I do. But it's, I just think that the reason we run our own small businesses is because of various things that have happened to us. And the more we share those stories, the more people are inspired, they're motivated, they want to come and work with you. They think, oh yeah, Laura's the one for me. She struggled with XYZ as well. I can definitely talk to her. And if you're a type of coach where the problem hasn't happened to you, but you've helped loads of people where it has happened, then you can tell their stories. And there are ways of obviously keeping that confidentiality. But you can tie it in with, you can make up characters where the problems you've helped fix, but you can make them up. So you can tell these stories. And if you don't want to be active on social media, you do need to get used to writing. And also you need to consider things like YouTube and things like that, where maybe if you don't want to be on social media, but you can grow still on these other platforms. So there are loads of different ways, of course, but Google is such a big area. So that's a couple of starting points, I would definitely say.
I think it's interesting because for again, a lot of the people that I support and blogging's how I started my business was originally as a blogger. So I'm on the blog train. On the blog train, on the YouTube train, on the podcast train. But there's something different about the visibility I think that people have on social media and the visibility that they feel people for some reason, and it's really interesting, I think, to understand why that is, feel a lot more comfortable being visible via Google, via, writing blog posts, perhaps even via YouTube, and Pinterest is another big platform that I'm really active on. So it's interesting that these different places, have you got any inkling in terms of what might be the difference? Do you think that social media feels a bit more judgy? I don't know. It's an interesting one, isn't it?
So, so the thing is with social media, being visible on social media, everyone can see your likes, your comments. They can't see your saves. They can't see your story views. They
Yeah.
can see your number of followers. There's just, it feels much more exposing.
Yeah.
Whereas with a blog, no one can see your Google Analytics.
Yes.
No one can, no one comments on blogs anymore, not
Yeah.
like in the old days. So,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, that's just like no one knows. So if you're a bit more naturally confident or naturally, I hate this word, but showy offy,
Yeah.
then you're like, look at me on social media, I'm posting. But if you are more introverted, perhaps, or shyer, or haven't got that confidence yet for whatever reason, then blogging is a brilliant way to do it. Of course, there's very different sort of attitudes with that. And I do attract a lot of people who do want to focus on the SEO rather than become these huge, get these huge followings on social media.
Yeah.
So I definitely do think there's like a different mindset, if you like, for the two different types of visibility.
Yeah, yeah, it's really fascinating, I think, just in terms of like how things have shifted with those particular platforms. I think with blogging as well, and again, that would be interesting to kind of chat about this topic, but in terms of like the actual physical visibility that a lot
Yeah.
of women struggle with, and I'm sure this is something that you've done a lot of work around with your community as well, is the sometimes I think that it's the fear of actually people seeing the face, hearing the voice, the things that come up when we start to get like, and I think for a lot of people, blogging's really attractive as a way of being visible because there is still that safety net almost where you don't
Yes.
have to necessarily show your face if you don't want to.
Yeah.
Have you got any kind of, have you come across any particular helpful tips for women who are struggling? Because obviously, in today's world, so many women are constantly judged on how we look, on how we sound, on how we come across, millions of different ways, not to mention, how things like race come into things as well, and all sorts of different aspects of
Wild.
it. What does this look like in your work with women around visibility?
So the way I mean, absolutely, blogging is a brilliant way to get your confidence muscles growing essentially, because that's where you can start to see the traffic come in if you're
Yeah.
optimizing them to get found on Google, and you can start to go, yeah, I'm an expert, and collect that evidence that I was talking about,
Yeah.
right? But then of course, there is also like a rise of faceless brands, which I don't know, if if you sell products, it's easier to be a faceless
Yeah.
brand, I think.
Yeah.
Whereas if you are a coach, then actually it is harder to be a faceless brand. And there are
Hmm.
many accounts out there trying to do it,
Yeah.
or you can just sort of film yourself putting down a cup of coffee and put the text over it and everything.
Hmm.
Really, it's about, I mean, I've been in and out of therapy my whole adult life. And
Yeah.
I've been, some of it's free, some of it's paid. And I've been privileged to be able to do that. But it is about addressing those underlying issues.
Yeah.
So I'm not a mental health, I'm not qualified
Yeah.
expert in that, but I do know I would always encourage people to get mental health support and to really address what's underlying those confidence issues. Because of course, as there's all sorts of weird people on the internet.
Yes.
There really are. And I'm really sorry for that. And I think it royally sucks for a variety of reasons. However, when you are looking at the people who you want to be found by
Hmm.
and speaking to them and focusing on them and then collecting that confidence as you go. So the happy clients, there is an aspect that you will have to deal with. And I hate that, but there
Yeah.
is. I have been trolled, I'm going to say maybe 3 times in my life, knowingly. Obviously, people say all sorts of things behind your back. You can't really
Yeah.
control that, fine. But every time I have been, then, like I'm talking like going viral for the wrong reasons or
Yes.
whatever. I think a
Yes.
lot of people kind of get scared of that. And yeah, it's obviously felt disgusting and what are you going to do and all this kind of thing. You
Mhm.
have to then take care of yourself, take care of your mental health, reach out for support. So we talk about this kind of stuff in my Visible Vibes
Yeah.
community
Yeah.
because obviously people leave weird comments underneath my members YouTube tutorials,
Yeah.
or they criticize the advice they're sharing. Well, if they're doing things like that, you're like, well, I know that these are the facts. So
Yeah.
something that I find really helpful is have you heard of, I think it's from transactional analysis? Have you
Oh,
heard of
okay.
this? Yeah, so basically it's something that I've always, I've always been very interested in this kind of the top level of it. I'm not a psychologist, but this, you've got adult mode, child mode, and parent mode.
Yes.
And when we are visible online, we are essentially being parent mode in some ways. We're departing our advice, we're sharing our expertise in some way, whatever it is. And then the keyboard warriors or the trolls or whatever you want to call them are going into children mode. No, you smell, blah, blah, whatever stupid comments they're leaving, right? Yeah. And so what I'm doing more and more whenever this happens to my members is encouraging them to stay in adult mode. Sticking to the facts really does help because, when I've had people go into child mode with me, I'm like, I can't go into parent mode more. I have delivered some advice as an adult that you see as a parent.
Yeah.
They've gone into child mode. I have to stay in adult mode. Here are the facts.
Yeah.
I am not getting emotionally embroiled in whatever might be going on for you. You're not going to play that out on the screen. You're not going to get involved in some bitter war, name shaming, whatever. And then, of course, if it, you can't, there's increasingly legislation now being brought in for when it gets, to protect people online, because of course this is a real issue. And if people are copying content, I work with a brilliant lawyer, Heather Stanford, absolutely amazing, who has helped me send cease and desist to people. So there's all sorts of different ways that, yes, we might be worried that might happen, but I'll be honest, it so rarely happens because I've got tight contracts in place now, thanks to my lawyer. I've got terms and conditions. I've got copyrighted content. I've got, all these kinds of things in place so as to protect myself.
I think often there's it's that fear, isn't it? And it's not to invalidate anyone's fear of this stuff happening, but I think sometimes, especially when people are kind of new to, particularly with social media, I think there's this fear that every time they post something, they're going to have an unpleasant comment or a negative comment. And obviously I'm speaking as a white, pretty straight sized woman. So my experience will not be the same as everybody else's, but generally speaking, it's not as, again, a bit like you, I can count on one hand the number of kind of dodgy comments that I've had, but it is having a bit of a strategy for how to handle it, and knowing that, and not expecting it not to happen, because it is that space, isn't it? And it is a possibility, but having a strategy ready to know that you can get supported if it does happen.
Of course. And I really do want to acknowledge my privilege in this situation. I'm white, queer. Yes, I've got blue hair, but I know I come from a position of privilege, and I don't have a lot of the things that people comment on. So obviously, my advice will only apply to a certain type of cases. But with these, block and report. I get so active on block and report sometimes. Because apart from anything else, because of the bots, but also because we do have to protect ourselves. We do, of course, we want to create a safe space. And as a health and life coach, I mean, goodness, you want to create a safe space for people. You want to create that community sense, and by that you are protecting yourself in that as well.
I think it's interesting, again, you mentioned earlier on about there definitely seems to be a link between your own self-care and your visibility, and how safe it feels and how kind of resourced you feel to be visible. And that's definitely something I found in my own experience as well. As I think the more kind of, the more self-confidence, and the more that I've got strategies, and the more that I do take care of myself, the better it feels to be visible. And and obviously your business reaps the reward, because the alternatives of not being visible in your business is that no one finds you. which is a bit of an issue if we're wanting to grow in a business. But I think it's really interesting conversation. And I always like to finish off these chats with people is to ask them a little bit about what their version of success is. So here in Wholehearted Business Land, we talk a lot about working towards our own version of success, rather than what we think our businesses should look like, or how much money we think we should be making to be successful, which again is an interesting aspect of visibility. Sometimes we feel like we're not allowed to be visible unless we have like these incredibly massive businesses that are in 7 figures. But I'd love to know what your version of success is, Maddy.
Happy clients, happy me, well resourced to take care of myself, and enjoy my life outside of running my business.
Yes. Amazing. Yeah. Sometimes easily forgotten that we've actually got a life outside of business. So this is
Yes.
partly why we're doing it. But yeah, that's amazing. So where can people find you if they want to know more about you? And do you have a freebie that you would like to share as well? And where can people find that?
Thank you. So yes, so you can come and find me, Maddy Shine, everywhere online. maddyshine.co.uk, maddy.shine on Instagram, Maddy Shine on Facebook. I am also Sassy and Soft is my done for you agency.co.uk, and Sassy and Soft on Instagram. You can download my freebie, Tell Google You Exist. I'll share the link.
Yeah, the link, amazing. I'll put that in the description alongside this as well. But that has been so much fun. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a really interesting conversation. I think just the whole topic of visibility is really fascinating, because it kind of it's strategy, and it's also mindset, and it's also, you know, kind of bigger societal stuff as well comes into it. It's a really interesting topic.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.